In the 1960s, East Side High School in Paterson, New Jersey, is one of the top-performing schools in the area. Joe Clark, a beloved teacher, is known for his engaging teaching methods that combine discipline with fun competitions. His students admire him, but during a staff meeting, Joe clashes with the teachers' union for failing to support reform and caving in to political pressure. His fiery outburst leads the board to transfer him to another school. 20 years later, East Side High has fallen into chaos. Violence, drug abuse, and complete disrespect for authority plague the halls. Students beat up teachers, illegal substances are traded openly, and the school's performance is abysmal. Most students can't pass basic skills tests. With the state threatening to take control, Mayor Botman fears for his political future. Superintendent Frank Napier and school board attorney Mr. Rosenberg suggest bringing Joe Clark back as principal. Though hesitant, Botman agrees. When they approach Joe, he initially refuses, pointing out that the mayor only wants to save himself, not the kids. But Frank challenges Joe's legacy, telling him that being Crazy Joe hasn't changed anything. Convinced he still has something to prove, Joe returns to East Side as principal. From day one, Joe establishes himself as an authoritarian leader. In a meeting with the staff, he makes it clear that only he will speak and demands a list of all students involved in criminal activity. He orders the custodian to clean graffiti with help from students in detention and assigns hall guards to combat violence. He also demotes English teacher Mr. Darnell to assistant football coach and insists every effort be made to raise test scores, as the school needs at least a 75% pass rate. At a school assembly, Joe shocks everyone by expelling 300 students identified as troublemakers. He promises the rest of the student body a safe and serious environment, warning them that if they don't study, they could be next. That afternoon, he faces backlash from angry parents, especially Liana, whose child was expelled. Joe remains firm, explaining that sacrificing a few is necessary to save the many, 2,700 students, to be exact. His passionate speech wins over most parents, though Liana stays bitter. The next morning, expelled student Sams confronts Joe, pleading for a second chance. Joe, seeing through his lies and lack of accountability, takes him to the rooftop and challenges him to consider whether he really wants to die from drugs. Sams breaks down, promises to change, and Joe agrees to let him back under strict conditions. Joe remains hands-on with the students, interacting with them at lunch and reinforcing standards, from dress code to singing the school song. When students mock the tradition, he publicly calls them out and assigns detention. Even teachers aren't spared. Darnell gets sent to the office for bending down during the school song. Joe later enforces a new rule. Students must be able to sing the school song on command. Music teacher Mrs. Elliott objects, arguing that they're preparing for a prestigious choir concert in New York. Joe, unwilling to compromise, fires her and cancels the concert. He assigns the music program to pianist Mrs. Powers instead. Tensions rise further when Joe suspends Darnell after an argument. Vice Principal Joan tries to reason with him, but Joe insists that being misunderstood is part of his job. On practice test day, students try their best, but when results arrive, a dismal 33% pass rate. Joe blames the teachers and launches an aggressive improvement plan, including weekend tutoring and home visits to engage parents. Meanwhile, Joe's extreme methods spark outrage. When one of the expelled students sneaks in and attacks Ray with a knife, Joe orders that all school doors be chained shut for safety. This move violates fire codes, and Liana seizes the opportunity to rally support for Joe's removal, teaming up with the fire chief. Joe tries to help struggling student Kenesha, who's homeless after her mother abandoned her. He visits her mother and persuades her to take Kenesha back by promising support, a job, and better living conditions. Despite everything, Mayor Botman makes a deal with Liana. He'll fire Joe in exchange for her support during the election. The plan is to arrest Joe for the chained doors after the final test. Rosenberg overhears this scheme and alerts Frank, who rushes to warn Joe. They implement a plan. If the fire chief arrives, teachers will remove the chains immediately using a Code 10 alert. Joan grows increasingly frustrated with Joe's controlling behavior and lack of support. She asks for a transfer, calling him an egotistical bully who disrespects his staff. Joe reluctantly gives her the papers. At the next assembly, however, he gives an inspiring speech, urging students to rise above their reputation and expressing his appreciation for the teachers, crediting Joan for making him realize their worth. This heartfelt moment convinces Joan to stay. On test day, the students are confident, but Liana, unwilling to wait, pressures Botman to act. The fire chief arrives with reporters and a court order. Although Joe tries to initiate the Code 10, the chief plays a recording of the alert. He's anticipated the move. Joe is arrested in front of everyone, leaving Joan temporarily in charge. At the school board meeting that night, Liana argues for Joe's dismissal, citing the 33% practice test results. But the meeting is interrupted by hundreds of students demanding Joe's release. Botman, fearing political fallout, asks Joe to tell the students to leave. Joe refuses until Botman threatens to involve the police. To protect the students, Joe addresses them, praising their passion but urging them to stay peaceful. As he speaks, Joan bursts in with breaking news. The final test results are in. East Side has passed. The entire school erupts in celebration. Joe keeps his job, and Botman is publicly humiliated. Later, during graduation, Joe personally hands out diplomas to each senior, offering individual words of encouragement and pride. The once cauldron of violence has transformed into a place of hope and unity, all because one man dared to believe in the power of discipline, respect, and second chances.